I'm Andrea. I'm the Sustainability Director for the town of Acton. I've been with Acton for about 3 years. With us today is also Hannah Arledge. She's our Sustainability Fellow, and she just graduated from the Tufts UEP program, Urban Environmental Planning Program. And we've been very lucky to have her supporting all the work that has to do with gas leaks monitoring and expanding our knowledge and capabilities when it comes to geothermal networking. We also have Angie Alberto Escobar. She's the Director of Community Gas to Geo at HEAT. This is a Boston-based nonprofit committed to enabling a just and equitable thermal transition. Angie is originally from Los Angeles, California, where she studied mathematics and engineering at Glendale College. She also holds a degree in sustainable energy management with a minor in economics from SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry in association with Syracuse University. Currently, she provides technical assistance to communities in the Commonwealth that are pursuing geothermal networks. All her work is done centering people and equity first. Sean Luce has served as the City of Framingham's Sustainability Coordinator in the Department of Capital Projects and Facilities Management since 2018. Through collaboration with municipal departments, local organizations, and neighboring communities, he is involved with a variety of projects and programs aimed at improving local and regional energy and environmental sustainability, acting as the City of Framingham's primary representative for the Eversource Geothermal Pilot Project. Sean has continued to play a core role in the development of Framingham's geothermal network since 2021, when his initial efforts to bring the project to Framingham began. So I'm very excited for you all to learn more about this today. So today we'll be talking about monitoring gas leaks, new maps and methane survey in Acton. So Hannah will be leading us through that conversation. Then we're going to pass it on over to Angie, who's going to talk about what gas to geo and network geothermal systems actually is. And then we'll pass it on to Sean, who will talk about the case study that they've done in Framingham. So they've actually installed network geothermal as part of an Eversource pilot. So he'll be diving into that project. And with that, I'll pass it on to Hannah. And you'll all have an opportunity to ask questions after each presentation. Feel free to add questions on the chat and then we can go back to them, or you'll have an opportunity to actually ask your questions on the mic. Thank you all.
Thanks, Andrea. So yeah, as we've been looking towards greater opportunities for cleaner heating and cooling in Acton, we've also been taking a closer look at the impacts of fossil fuels in the community. And one way that we've been doing that is through monitoring gas leaks. So in a moment, I'm going to share with you a new resource that we have. It's a web page of interactive maps. These maps include the grade, location, and extent data of reported gas leaks in Acton neighborhoods. All of this data is courtesy of National Grid and HEAT. They've cleaned it and made it really easy for us to put in a map. So these maps will continue to be updated as we get new information. So I'm going to try and share this. And hopefully, can you see this screen or is it still on the? Cool. Okay, so there's a ton of information on this webpage, and I'm just going to highlight a few things, and then this link will be available for everyone to explore in further depth. So gas leaks in Acton, right off of the bat, you can see a map that shows all of the buildings heated by gas in Acton. So we have a lot of natural gas infrastructure, and statewide, around 22% of Massachusetts underground natural gas pipes are considered leak prone. This is accounted for about 10% of Massachusetts greenhouse gas emissions, and is equivalent to almost $9 million of leaked gas because we have these just leak-prone systems. So we're looking at ways that we can prioritize cleaner energy solutions in areas that might be more vulnerable to these kinds of gas leaks. Here we have a bit of a Q&A, some of the like at-a-glance questions you might have regarding gas leaks, what you should do, how gas leaks are graded. how we account for them in Acton's greenhouse gas inventory. And then we move into some options for how to transition your home away from natural gas. And Acton has many resources you might already be familiar with, like our Clean Energy Coaching Program and Energize Acton, which really do a great job of walking residents through making transitions for their home. And I introduced network geothermal, but we'll be hearing a lot about that today, so I'll let our guests share more. We have a bit of an at a glance, some media about natural gas leaks impacts in the town. And then I'm just going to focus on this first map. There's several more, just so you can get a sense of how to interact with the map. So you can expand it. These are all of the open and repaired gas leaks from 2022, which was the latest data set we had. We actually just received updated information for 2024. So all of these will be new and updated ASAP. So you can go in here and you can click on any leak and it will give you all of the information, the nearest address, the grade, when it was discovered, all sorts of things, just so you have a better idea of what National Grid has on their books. And yeah, just a little bit more visibility. So I'm going to get us back to here. Okay, are we back on the slideshow again? Good. Okay. So in addition to our gas leak maps, we've also been conducting a new gas leak survey. We're working with an outside contractor who is monitoring methane levels, checking known leaks that we already have on our maps, and then identifying new leaks. We did this back in 2017 and found many leaks that were not already reported on National Grid's books. And then also importantly, this contractor is able to evaluate damage to trees. So identify areas where gas leaks have interrupted a root line, and being able to identify those trees early on helps us be proactive and taking action so that they don't cause further damage. And then with all of this new data, we're going to be updating our reporting, our mapping, and using this for planning. So we'll be able to report new leaks to National Grid, update gas leak maps, identify areas with higher risk or greater need for new infrastructure, and then take some action on damaged trees. So I have a short video, it's just 1 minute long, from last week. Andrea and I went out with the contractor, and I'll show you a little bit of what it looks like to do this survey.
One of the worst leaks I had was right here. And they did it. There's nothing on the map right now. The town lost a big oak tree right here. See where this patch is? And then see where this hole is right here? There was an oak tree right here. 9.
13. 24.
There it is. See the black, the vegetation was the giveaway.
Oh.
Okay? So that's why I suspected there was gas here, because of this right here. Now remember to watch cars coming at you.
So I'll be a car watcher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
See now, okay?
Oh,
35
wow.
gas this side.
All
So
the way
now we
under
have a
the
leak extent that goes from there down to there, now to over here. Watch this. All right.
Okay. Super brief, but gives you a little bit of a sense of what the contractor is doing, how he's determining how large the new leaks are. And let's move my share back to this guy. All right, hopefully that's the last hitch. Yeah, so that's about it. Any questions on this section of the presentation? And you feel free to use the hand raise function or submit your question in the chat.
One other thing to mention about that video is that that leak was not documented on National Grid. So it is interesting to see what gets mapped and what gets missed.
I have a question. Once it's repaired, the leak becomes a repaired leak, but then like 20% of the repaired leaks fail. And so then it doesn't get back on the like open leak list. Just as a point of, yeah, that 20% is a number from heat, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
So
that's a very good point.
It's kind of an endless cycle.
Yeah, and that's something that I think is worth continuing to monitor, is how often these fail, and it goes back to that whole point of, is it a worthwhile investment to continue to fix?
I got a call. Yeah, so go ahead.
Versus continuing to versus adding new infrastructure for clean energy. So it's interesting to capture those. So this is now listed as a new open leak, and it was a previously repaired one. So it falls under that 20% stat that you mentioned, Jude. I see what is CH4. That's just the chemical name for methane. So it's a good question. Any other questions? If not, we'll just jump on to Angie. Angie, do you want to share your screen?
Sounds good. All right. Can everyone see my slides?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I'm Angie Alberto Escobar, as Andrea said earlier. Thank you all for having me, and forgive me for any fuzziness today. A little fuzzy today. So right off the bat, I'd like to preface this presentation by saying that heat never takes money from industry, gas, or geo. We're funded by generous individuals and the following foundations in the bottom right-hand corner. Our mission is to accelerate an equitable thermal transition, and that path has led us to this technology and this transition model. So I'll be sharing a little bit more about that with you today. Yep. As Hannah mentioned, our work really started in gas leak mapping and repairing those super emitting leaks that made up 7% of those made up 50% of the emissions from gas leaks. And so that's really where heat's work started, and it's evolved to the transition off of gas in order to avoid kind of what Jude mentioned, pruning ourselves off the gas system indefinitely, with a renewable energy technology that is non-combusting and is safer for all of us and for the environment. So these are the emissions reductions commitments in the nation. In order to meet these mandates and these commitments, we need to electrify what is building sector operations that account for roughly 30% of CO2 emissions. And the way that we're moving forward with decarbonizing the building stock is energy efficient electric heat pumps, so electrifying building heating and cooling, and renewable electricity paired with renewable electricity. As our grid becomes more and more renewable over time, the electricity used by these heat pumps will hopefully be emission free. But this is what our current electric peaks look like. And so a question that we asked ourselves at HEAT is, what effect will electrification of our building stock, 2.5 million buildings in Massachusetts, have on our electric peaks, right? Currently, our electric peaks are in the summer when people's window AC units come on. But if we're transitioning our natural gas heating in the winter to electricity, this graph will look significantly different, right? Here is the gas infrastructure work for the next 5 years that at conservative estimates will cost ratepayers $40 billion in assets, pipes that will be stranded in the ground due to these mandates and commitments that we have in the Commonwealth to move beyond gas, right? So he saw this problem, this large sink of money of $40 billion as an opportunity to use those funds, those stranded asset funds, and redirect it towards clean energy investment. So over the course of a few years and many conversations with experts in the gas sector and many other sectors, energy sectors from beyond Massachusetts, the possible solution that he concluded was a geothermal network that is shared infrastructure in the street, kind of like the gas system. They have this, a geothermal network would have this horizontal or lateral shared infrastructure pipe full of just plain water just below the frost line in the ground where the Earth's temperature is stable year round. It's not subject to the variability of the air, right? It's more stable there, filled with just plain water. In some instances, you can add glycol if you have if you're worried about freezing, but glycol is food grade and generally considered safe. And the beauty of these geothermal networks is that they can be interconnected over space and time. So this is almost like a plug and play technology that would leverage the existing gas utilities expertise of putting pipe in the ground in the right of way of the street and delivering thermal service to each of the residents on that street, or on the loop is how we say it at Heat. So a geothermal network, geothermal is used in a variety of different technological applications. So there's many different geothermals. You can create power, electricity. If you go deep enough, you can get steam to run a turbine and energize electrons and create electricity. You could also go not as deep, but pretty deep, and get really hot water and use that hot water in a district heating system. We're not talking about either of these technologies. We're not distributing heat in the form of steam or hot water, and we're not creating electricity. It's more similar to a single geothermal building, a single building application where the boreholes are generally shallow. So we call shallow anything between 200 and 1,000 feet approximately. And again, the temperature delivered is actually ambient temperature. And that ambient temperature, that stable temperature, is delivered to the heat pumps at the building level. The heat pump works like a refrigerator. So if you have a refrigerator, the inside is cold, the back is hot. What's happening there? It's using the ambient temperature in your home and separating it into hot and cold. And so that's exactly what a heat pump does. Your refrigerator is a heat pump, and that would be at the building level. And why networking? Why does it matter to network these systems together? Well, as we're electrifying our entire building stock, or that's our goal at least, we want to be able to maximize the efficiencies wherever we can. And we know that when one building is cooling and rejecting heat, other buildings may be in heating mode. And so when you have this lateral connection, this horizontal network connecting the thermal loads, physically connecting the buildings and you making good use of that wasted thermal energy and delivering it to other buildings. So I like to show this Falcon curve. So how does electrification affect our grid? Well, it depends on what technology we use, right? If we use the most inefficient electrification technology for heating only, we would use electric baseboard, which has a coefficient of performance of 1, which means for every 1 unit of energy, it produces 1 unit of energy. That would create this peak, this winter peak curve that looks like the wings of a falcon. The higher the efficiency of the electrification technology, the lower the wings of this falcon. So you can see the winter peaks as the electrification method becomes more efficient, the impact on our grid is decreased. So a ground source heat pump is pretty dang efficient. It's COP, coefficient of performance of 4, but by networking the system and leveraging that sharing of energy, where additional thermal energy doesn't have to be pulled out of the ground, rather than it's just shared across that horizontal loop, you can get a coefficient of performance as high as 6 is what we've seen in a case study. And that case study is readily available for anybody that wants to take a closer look at that. And so the benefits of using technology like network geothermal has a large impact on our grid, what the cost of building out our grid for decarbonization will look like, in the long run, and that cost, the avoided cost of not having to build out the grid as much as we would have to with, say, an electric baseboard technology comes back to us in the form of savings, right? And it's really important to note that heat pumps, are not just a fad. They've actually outsold gas furnaces and will continue to outsell gas furnaces. For one, heat pumps provide cooling as well, right? So that's part of their increased popularity as our climate warms. But who are the people that are purchasing these air source heat pumps, that are going out and purchasing these air source heat pumps? They're likely not renters, and they're likely not the low income, right? It's the people that have the discretionary income at the end of the life of their boiler to go out and buy a heat pump and put up that upfront cost. What happens is, as people do go off the gas system, kind of a building by building electrification, an unmanaged electrification, this decreases the amount of customers on the current gas system. And the way that our gas bills work is that the infrastructure that the gas utility puts in is amortized over time, and the ratepayer pays that in the form of our bills, right? And so if there are less ratepayers, that equation changes for the rest of us, and our gas bills will increase. And so HEAT's point of view is that in order to enable an equitable transition, we want to avoid this unmanaged transition approach, so that renters and low income aren't left behind as folks electrify. This was in the Massachusetts Future of Gas docket. It shows that network geothermal, compared to other technology, so this house-by-house approach, would increase the energy burden on the low income. Network geothermal is the lowest of these approaches for energy burden on the low income. So what is gas to geo? Gas to geo really is a zonal electrification approach, where we go down a street, put in the infrastructure, and connect all ideally connect all of the customers on that loop, on that block, on that, whatever the configuration is, to provide equitable access to renewable energy, no matter who, no matter the income level of the folks on the street, they would have access to the thermal energy supply. And this really is in line with HEAT's mission to advanced a just transition, no matter who you are. And here's a shout out to our friends at Eastie Farm that are advancing equity in their own ways and providing food to the community with a geothermal greenhouse. Just transition also includes people on the other side, right? Not just the people that are using the energy, but the people that are delivering the energy. So there's a number of gas workers that are nervous about what their future looks like because they're fossil workers, right? But the really amazing part of network geothermal is that they use high density polyethylene pipes. They're the same pipes, the same material, the same procedures that the gas workers currently use to install gas pipe. I was actually on site just yesterday and heard from a contractor that said, there was folks on a tour there asking some questions, and verbatim, he said, this is the exact same pipe, the exact same work that we do already with gas. And so those skills are directly transferable, enabling the fossil blue collar workforce to transition, as well as, the engineers and all of the other folks in the gas utilities to transition into the clean energy economy. So in conclusion, these are the outcomes that I like to share today about network geothermal. We want rapid building decarbonization to meet our emissions reduction targets. It's really important to do that, but we want to do that in an efficient way, in a way that will reduce our electric grid impacts, a cost-effective way, and avoid reinvestment in gas pipes. We can do that if we transition the business model of the incumbent gas utility. There's a number of other outcomes. I invite you to check out our wiki page to kind of thumb through those materials. I'm just going to take a pause here for any questions on NetGeo before I get into the rest of the program here. Okay, well, in Acton, Acton is we're really excited because HEAT had a small carve out in our research project to fund feasibility studies, and Acton applied and was awarded a $10,000 to do this exact work that we're doing here today, is informing the community about what NetGeo is and its outcomes. And this program is focused on creating a pipeline of shovel-ready projects in the Commonwealth, so that as the Massachusetts pilots roll out, we learn from them, and the gas utilities whet their appetite for them. There may be other communities, municipalities that are well equipped to be next in line for a project. So what we're doing here today is we're creating a network of folks that are deeply invested in a just transition from gas to thermal to renewable thermal, or gas to geo. And I can't say how incredibly impactful it is to just be connected and collaborate. This is, HEAT started just in Massachusetts, just doing gas leak work, and has now expanded with our partner Building Decarbonization Coalition to lead a coalition of coalitions all along the states. And so here are the states represented that are doing this exact work, sharing the outcomes in network geothermal, and also aligning with their gas utilities or whoever might be amenable to advancing this solution in communities. This coalition has been radical. They've passed, this actually is not up to date. Maryland just passed the Warmth Act, and there's legislation all along the nation. And the coalition work paired with legislation has really, you know, gotten the gas utilities across the nation's interest. And so we have pilots in Minnesota, New York, Massachusetts, and I think Colorado are as well now. And yeah, the gas utilities are exploring, they're learning, they're in some states being mandated to look at this solution. So I put this slide up to say that this is not just a kind of like a thing happening just in Massachusetts where we're super blue or anything like that. It's really something that's resounding all along the United States, red, blue, purple states, because it just makes sense. And so here are the feasibility studies across the nation, as well as you may know, Massachusetts and New York are ahead of the curve here. And so that's exactly why we're investing in our communities here so that you guys can get educated, get involved, and hopefully be next in line. So this is probably what Sean is going to talk about his project, right? So this is kind of the phase in which we're working. The first phase is the initial demonstration, which is Framingham, right? And then we're hoping that as we prove that this makes sense, that it's cost effective, that it's delivering energy both in summer and winter, that we can scale and iterate. So this iterate really means, learn as much as possible from the first and optimize in the places that we can and scale this technology until we prune the gas system and only have gas in the most hard to decarbonize areas, like heavy industry, gas smelting, things like that. So you're sitting in the gas to geo transition in action in Acton. Thanks all for your attention. I'll take any questions y'all have.
Thank you. Yeah, Karen, go ahead.
So I have a sort of a local question and a national question. On the local side, many of the neighborhoods in Acton are quite suburban style. Like there's not necessarily a lot of areas with mixed use. And I just wonder, if you see a lot of options for networked geothermal in Acton, or what would be Heat's vision for those neighborhoods where the networked geothermal might not be the best option. So that's the local question. And the national question is, which state has the best thermal model at the moment?
Well, I'm going to be biased, and I'm going to say because we have a pipe in the ground, I think Massachusetts is doing really well. We don't have, so we did it a little bit backwards. We didn't put legislation forth before installing or asking the gas utilities, giving them permission to install network geothermal. So we're a little bit backwards there. But in terms of learnings, I would say that Massachusetts is definitely ahead of the game because we have Framingham, Lowell, Franklin Field, and others. I would also say that in regulation, New York is ahead of the game because almost all of the action is happening at the regulatory level. They're really trying to understand how they're going to make rates for New Yorkers affordable, and how they can advance this as quick as possible, because New York is a very competitive state. And so they have 11 projects that are being investigated now. The gas utilities have set forth plans to the DPU in New York, and those are all publicly available, and you can see kind of the difference. I'd say the key difference to me as an environmentalist first is the design of the systems. In Massachusetts, we're doing an ambient temperature loop, single loop, that can be scaled over time, and we're really encouraging a minimal amount of glycol or just plain water, and essentially for the system to be 100% renewable. So no gas at all, even as a backup, right? All the backup at the Framingham site is electric boiler and electric resistance in the homes as just a precautionary measure. In New York, though, they are looking at some hybrid approaches, right? So they're looking at approaches that leverage the networking piece, but in some instances, they're pairing gas with geothermal. So the environmentalist in me says no to that. So for suburban locations, it's still possible to network. I mean, it it depends on the thermal sources. The most critical part of any geothermal system is to balance the loads. And this can be done in a variety of ways. We can talk more about that offline maybe, because there is just a number of design methods that you can, as you're retrofitting your home, change its energy demand, etc. It's possible in a suburban setting, but you maybe will need maybe a grocery store or an ice rink or some other thermal source. It could be a pond, it could be water nearby. So there are ways to do it. I just haven't looked at Acton super closely to say, okay, hey, in this neighborhood, it would be a good fit. The alternative, obviously, I would say air source heat pumps are still a great alternative. There's a lot of incentives to purchasing an air source heat pump. There are other, barriers like the retrofits that you're not enjoying the fact that the gas utility is coming in and helping with the cost of those retrofits or anything like that when you're doing it on your own. But this is not to say, like, my presentation is not to say that network geothermal is the only electrification method, but it's a large part of the solution set. So the other part would be air source heat pumps. So wherever you can kind of combine both, I think is a good approach for maybe a suburban community like Acton.
And I see a question from, is it Sang? And we do have to, after this question, we'll move on to Sean. And then if you have any other questions, feel free to add them to the chat and we can collect them. And I know Angie has to leave right at 1, so we can always find ways to answer those via email if we need to. Go ahead, Sang.
Yes, hi. Thank you for your presentation. My name is Sang Cho, University of Cincinnati. I was just curious about if you have any sort of like a feasibility model or like an Excel table sheet where you can actually quantify these sort of scenarios for stakeholders to actually see the dollar value or the CO2 potential reduction loads. Do you have something like that you're using in-house?
We're working on it. We have a research project right now where we're actually creating a digital twin of the Framingham system, and then as more systems come on, we'll add to it, and that is a tool for both techno-economic analysis. So if you change the number of pumps and size and horsepower, what impact does that have on the system and the costs. So we're working on that now, and then it would also be a design tool. For now, all I have is the resources that are on this slide. So there's a toolkit. We haven't quite gotten to that level of detail, but we're working on it with a number of academic researchers from NREL, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, UC Berkeley, Oak Ridge, etc. And so we're hoping that at the end of or at the beginning of sometime in 2026, we'll have some products that we'll be able to produce. But we're in fairly early stages, given that the Framingham installation is only coming on in June. So we only have data for that one gas utility scenario. Yeah.
Great.
I'll stop there. Thank you.
Angie. Thank you. Really appreciate your time. Such a wealth of information. So now I'll pass it on to Sean, and then really quickly, if you all don't mind staying towards the end of the presentation, we'll be circulating a poll asking where you think we should pilot geothermal in town. We'd love your input. It's really important for this process. Angie mentioned that we're one of the communities who received 10,000. We'd like to then be the community that receives 50,000 to really continue to explore this further. And William mentioned one interesting location. We'd love to hear from you on those kinds of thoughts that you might have. And with that, I'll pass it on to Sean.
Thank you, Andrea. I appreciate it. And some amazing presentations. The work that you guys are doing with gas leaks is awesome. So applaud that, and really interested to learn more. But yeah, so just following Angie's presentation, I'll just provide you guys with a little bit of background on the geothermal pilot that's underway in Framingham. Really exciting project that, I think we were in the running along with a bunch of other communities in the state. And ultimately, Framingham was selected as the location for Eversource's pilot project, which, is a network geothermal system. So just to kind of help to set bearings on, where we're talking about in Framingham, you can see an image of it to the right-hand side of this slide. There's a map, I think, on my last slide that will show some of the locations better. But basically, the system is comprised of, so we have 3 different bore fields. Angie, was talking about previously, you can look at putting these wells along the right of way in the street, spaced out. I think that was looked at for this specific project, and ultimately it was determined to site essentially break that up between three bore fields across the neighborhood. And so we have a bore field at one of the public schools buildings. We have a bore field at our public housing in Framingham is managed by Framingham for the Framingham Housing Authority. And so we have one of our bore fields at the Housing Authority that's serving some of the units there. And then we also have one of our bore fields at our fire station number 5. And so each of these entities / buildings, they're all participating in the geothermal network. Approximately 36 buildings are served by the pilot, and that covers 375 tons of heating and cooling load. So once again, I guess just backing up a little, in terms of how this started, essentially the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities approved Eversource's pilot project to install and operate a geothermal network in a rate case in October 2020. Even before that, HEAT was doing a lot of amazing work to really push this idea forward of network geothermal, and that was, really the start of this project as well. On the Framingham side, for all the reasons that Angie highlighted the benefits of this technology, we see it as a really, really important opportunity to, advance the decarbonization of our community in a way that, it provides an equitable transition away from fossil fuels. Next slide. So when I had first heard about this opportunity, I actually went from one of the things that's amazing about being a sustainability coordinator is that we have such an amazing support network working with Andrea and team and colleagues from other communities. I actually heard about this from sustainability director in the town of Natick when the opportunity was kind of first out there. We learned about it, and at the time I was working with the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center on a couple of microgrid studies in our community. And so basically a microgrid is really just looking at creating a network of buildings and renewable energy assets that can kind of island from the utility grid in the event of like a power outage. So in that situation, they could function independently, rely on things like solar and battery storage to keep functioning. And so because we were doing these studies, we had a really great relationship with key stakeholders, including our housing authority. Obviously, I work a lot with our school department, our fire department. So it went well to, setting up a meeting to talk about this. And from there, really, it was just a lot of continued engagement with Eversource to kind of demonstrate that we were very interested in this wanting to pursue this opportunity. And for a lot of the same reasons that this neighborhood would be a great microgrid, it became clear that it could also be a really cool area for, a geothermal network. So if you want to advance, I think that should disappear. And yeah, so once again, kudos to HEAT, because one of the first opportunities to talk about this site on a really broad scale was during a forgetting the name of it, but HEAT held a series of sessions to kind of look through potential locations across the state and just kind of speaking to the process. Like, I think this was really helpful for us to learn about, outside of kind of the high level things that we knew about, that there was community support for this type of project in Framingham. There were a lot of technical details that were investigated in this kind of stakeholder discussion across communities. And so, at this session, and there's also some background, studies that were done, but one of the key priorities for the project is that it would be serving environmental justice populations, which this neighborhood has high representation for minority and low income residents. There's a pretty big diversity in heating fuel sources. And so just as an example, obviously there's a lot of natural gas heating systems that are in this area, but at our housing authority, a huge part of their units are electric resistance heat, which we saw as a pretty big opportunity for them to switch to a much more efficient energy source. And also they had window AC units that every summer they had to lug up into each of the units and put in. So for them to have a combined heating and cooling system, this was like a really cool thing for them. Also, another thing, having diverse heating and cooling loads. Angie talked, that was a great point there about, not just the distance between buildings, but the types of buildings that you have in your network is going to impact how well it functions, how efficient it is. So to her point about, if you have like a supermarket or ice rink, having that diversity and heating and cooling loads is really critical. And then, the thing that you don't really see unless you're doing like boreholes and things like that is geological conditions are really critical to supporting, a geothermal network. And in our case, we had very low depth to bedrock, which is what you want. The closer you are to bedrock when you're drilling, the cheaper that install is. And it also, it's better for thermal conductivity when you're running water through a network. I think you're able to exchange heat a little bit more efficiently. Next slide. So enough of the boring points. I figured I stole some photos from the Eversource team from a presentation that they'd done previously, added some of my own. But yeah, I guess I would just say, Framingham is not, like, this project is not finished. We're still working on it. Angie mentioned, so the loop is planned to be brought online in June, but there's still a lot of conversion work to be done. And I figured I'd just give a little, just a tour through images of kind of the process so far. So you can see here, not too glamorous, but these are, for me, it's exciting. These are our first test boreholes that were drilled for the project. And he actually came in to install some some equipment to be able to monitor temperature throughout these test boreholes, really helping to inform next steps with the project. Next slide. About, I would say the next summer, those were done in September of 22. That's when those boreholes were drilled. In May of the next year is really when things started to kick off. And this is when that pipe that's installed along the right of way across the streets, this is a mile of pipe that was installed across the whole neighborhood to connect all the different homes, businesses, multifamily buildings. This is what that work looks like. You can see on the left-hand side, the HDPE pipe with the geothermal stenciling on it. You can see the workers in the road installing the pipe. And next slide. And the other huge part of this work, of course, is drilling the bore fields. And so there was a lot of discussion, particularly early on, about how we were going to handle this. Ultimately, we came down working, Eversource leading that process. It was determined having, those 3 separate bore fields would be really advantageous from a kind of logistics perspective of having like central sites to do that. But then in addition, having each bore field kind of a little bit apart and over the course of the loop will help improve thermal performance. So it's not like you just have everything centralized at one location, and then the further you are away from the loop, the further you are away from that kind of like energy resource underground. One interesting thing I want to highlight, I have you can't really see them, but plan drawings on the left-hand side here. If you look on the leftmost drawing, you can see there's some lines that are going out in a circle in different directions. This was really a really cool thing I think we were able to do with this bore field installation. Because we wanted to preserve the ability in the future to put up solar canopies on that parking lot, if we went the conventional drilling method, which is like straight vertical boreholes, it would have taken up the whole lot and it would have been very difficult to try to site infrastructure around that. But we went with a deviated drilling method that allows us to essentially site the boreholes in a circle around each other very close together, and then they actually go in at an angle. And so they're going, way down 600, 700 feet, and they allow for much more space at the surface to be able to site solar canopies, things like that. If you want to advance, I think it'll start to show what that process looks like. You can see the deviated drilling method on the left-hand side, and then the more conventional bore field drilling on the right. And then you can see on the right our central pump house there that's being developed for, it's for the full loop. It also supports the Farley building from the school department that's participating in the project. And I know we're running on time, so I'll be very quick. I'm just going to skim through this. We're very thankful to work with HEED and Eversource on a lot of exciting community engagement activities, trying to keep residents up to date about what's happening, gain support for the project, things like that. You see some pictures there. Next slide. Yeah, so like I said, project's not finished. We're still in the thick of it. Right now, we're trying to complete the pump house. Building conversions have started, and on the municipal side, they haven't started just yet. So we're going to be doing those soon. And then, of course, there's the whole site restoration process that's also been underway for residents. Like all of their lines to their buildings have been installed. So Eversource has been working on that. We're also working on exploring an expansion to this project. So really excited about that. So with 2 minutes left, I'll stop there. Sorry if I went a little over.
No, that was perfect. Thank you so much, Sean. It's so helpful to see the details of an actual pilot. Does anyone have any questions? I did see someone. Okay, I see that the question was answered. Thank you, Heath. Does anyone have any questions for Sean? I guess you answered all their questions, Sean. Great work. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time here today. That was very useful. And we hope to eventually become a pilot ourselves. This is just a quick recap of some programs that we currently have in place for folks who are interested in transitioning today and can't wait for a geothermal pilot and so want to get moving now. We have our clean energy coaching program. We currently have 12 coaches who are been trained by Abode and Rewiring America to provide support to residents who would like to switch to heat pumps, install solar, drive EVs. And we also have energizeacton.org, which is a list, has many resources and information on making the transition as well. Everything from adding solar to weatherization, to composting at home. So everything you can imagine that has to do with reducing your carbon footprint. And that's also run by volunteers who do an incredible job putting all the information together and putting together events. I saw that one of them actually listed an event that's happening later this month. Next, please. This is just to give you a sense of the requests that come in our coaching program. About 80% are regarding heat pumps and heating and cooling. So it really is an important area, and there's a lot of gaps in information. So our clean energy coaches are filling a very important gap, and are an important resource for residents who want to learn more about heat pumps and want to install heat pumps in their homes. And with that, I know we're over time, so we'll share the link. If you can all take some time to fill out some answers. It's just a Google form, so we'll paste it on the chat, and it shouldn't take too long to fill it out. We really appreciate your time, everyone. We'll keep the line open in case anyone has any other questions. And we'll circulate this recording and the slides to everyone who registered.